Yeah, see, Danny, we're entering into very complicated territory because we're going to have to deal with the fact that, um, you know, policies have unintended consequences. And in a sense, the US policy over the last 20 years, from a position of extreme strength, I mean, let's be clear about that. United States has an immense military power, has base structures all over the world, continually building new base structures. Terminal 3 in Accra Airport in Ghana has been taken over by the US military. There's a conversation that the US is having with the Zambian government to construct some sort of base in Zambia. So the US, with this immense power, has attempted several adventures, let's call them that, and there have been unintended consequences. Let's lay out one of them. As I said, right now in Samarkand, Thursday and Friday, 15th and 16th of September, the Shanghai Cooperation Organization is meeting. This was an organization set up in 2001 by powers that surround Afghanistan. They had the first meeting in Shanghai. That's why it's called the Shanghai Cooperation Organization. Many Central Asian countries which had been worried about the expansion of the kind of Taliban's ideology into their countries, particularly Uzbekistan. This meeting, by the way, the 22nd summit, is being held in Samarkand in Uzbekistan. Well, interestingly, over the course of these 20 some years, more than the Central Asian states have joined the SCO, including India. Very interesting. India, close ally of the United States, is a member of the SCO. Iran was just inducted into the SCO. Now, one of the interesting features of the immense sanctions policy against Iran, the sanctions policy against Russia, has been that neither Russia nor Iran have been able to sell their energy to Europe, which has created a problem for Europe. In fact, on the 24th of August, Iran's oil minister Javed Oli said in public, he said in Tehran, that Iran is willing to sell energy to Europe in order to get it through the winter. Of course, it's a sly thing because what he's saying is we'll only do it if you can get the US off our backs because otherwise we can't sell you oil. Meanwhile, at this SCO meeting, when Iran becomes a full member of the SCO, comments were made on the sidelines of the meeting in Samarkand that Russia is going to increase its sale of energy to China, it already has increased it. In fact, what was to go through Nord Stream will now partly be diverted to the Chinese, and the Chinese are going to increase their buy of energy from Iran. This is interesting. Xi Jinping was to have gone a few months ago to Saudi Arabia. Saudi Arabia was a major exporter of energy to China. Those sales have been declining as China has picked up buying from Iran and from Russia. Now, I really don't want to exaggerate this point, but it is true that these policies have an unintended consequence. What is the unintended consequence? The integration of Asia and parts of Eurasia. I mean, parts of Europe are integrating. The reason I don't want to exaggerate this, Danny, is that people say, well, there's this new block being built. Well, but the truth is that one of the enduring sources of US power is the role of the dollar in international trade. And despite the fact that Russia and China, for instance, are de-dollarizing in their Russia-China mutual trade, yes, that's true. The percentage of trade denominated in dollars is going down. Nonetheless, other countries continue to trade in dollars. It's not easy to de-dollarize. You see, Danny and Vijay can decide we are not going to use dollars. Okay, we're going to use Danny money and Vijay money. That's fine. But what if Danny is a better economy than Vijay, and then Danny is holding all these surplus Vijay monies? There's no third person, no gnome going to show up and say, hey, listen, I'm going to buy Vijay monies from you. What if my economy is weak? As a consequence of that, to prevent that, the problem of trade, we begin to hold dollars because dollars will be purchased by other people. You see, so it's not easy to just pivot away from dollars. It's a huge journey for world relations, unless some international body comes around and creates a fiat currency. See, the dollar was created as, in a way, a fiat trade currency, both at Bretton Woods, but because the gold was denominated again against dollars, but really, when the United States went off the gold standard during President Richard Nixon's administration, Well, they used their power at that time to say the dollar is fiat money. Unless somebody comes around, and the Chinese are simply not interested in this. Just by the way, People's Bank of China, in fact, does something interesting, Danny. People's Bank of China has opened a window where you can show up there and you can say, I'm going to give you my Danny money, and they will give you renminbi. And then you take the renminbi and you will buy dollars in the open market against renminbi and use the dollars for your trade. So de-dollarization is a misleading idea. People shouldn't get too excited. If you look at the economics closely, it's not so easy. That's a source of enduring US power. That's why I'm very skeptical of the kind of declinist argument that goes around. People send PDFs all the time about, well, the dollar is going to end. Not so easy. I mean, I'm afraid it's not so easy.
Hmm. Well, it definitely feels like it's the case from what has happened, especially since the Russia-Ukraine conflict emerged. But this has been an ongoing process where there has been what you could call a diversification. There has been efforts to emphasize local currencies because the United States has really created a very, I mean, the dollar was always a tool of imperialism, but now it's created such a volatile situation that there really is no other choice but to try. But be that as it may, even Russia, in the early phase of the Russia-Ukraine conflict, had already begun this process of we're going to build this, as you said, alternative institution, a basket of currencies. We're going to put all of our local currencies and we're going to try to weigh that against the dollar and use that independently and de-emphasize and hopefully eventually de-dollarize altogether. But it's a slow process because the dollar remains dominant. I mean, we're seeing that with how the US has treated Europe at this time, what they've done to the euro. I mean, they've basically collapsed it. It essentially is, it's no more, it has no more value than the dollar. And now I think it's fallen a little bit below, which is a disaster for Europe's capitalist economy. So, I think it's a very good point that this is a slow process. I do think that there is this, it's both unintended in the sense that the United States certainly didn't want it. But I think what's happening too is that countries like China, Russia, Iran, all that you mentioned, especially in the Shanghai Cooperation Organization, which Iran just became an official member of, there is an increasing recognition that sovereignty and independence and commonalities amongst each other are that much more important to work together in this time where, as you said, US power, imperial power is both fragile, but it's very dangerous. And there is a real need to cooperate further, especially around these huge questions that I know you talk about all the time: climate change, denuclearization. I mean, there's so many issues that these countries need to get to work on. And the US imperial power is the biggest impediment in the way of that.